First class rejects you? The words landed with a slap, sharp and deliberate, slicing through the calm of the cabin like the snap of a belt. Flight attendant Lauren Mitchell didn't whisper. She declared it. Her fingers, painted in a soft pink that contrasted the steel in her voice, held Vanessa Carter's boarding pass out like something plucked from the trash. Then, right in front of the seated passengers and stunned crew, she tore it straight down the center. A jagged gasp shot through the first-class cabin of Horizon Star Flight 332. Heads turned, eyebrows raised. The hum of ambient chatter dissolved into silence. But Lauren wasn't done. She let the torn paper fall to the floor, stepped over it, and said, "If you don't move, I'll have security escort you off. This seat was never meant for you." Vanessa didn't flinch. Not yet. She simply looked down at the shredded platinum pass and then back up at Lauren's stone-hard expression. She'd seen that face before, too many times. Before we begin this story, ask yourself one question. Have you ever been told you don't belong? Not because of what you did, but because of what you look like. If you have, or if someone you love has, then listen closely. This story is for you. And if you believe in justice, real justice, share this video, subscribe, and keep watching. 12 minutes. That's all the delay was. A brief weather hold at Chicago O'Hare. But what unraveled in that cabin during those 12 minutes would change everything. For everyone aboard, Vanessa Carter stood in silence as the whispers started behind her. Passengers shifted, eyes assessed, phones weren't raised. This wasn't one of those viral moments, not yet, but the weight of judgment was just as heavy. "I don't know what scam you're running," Lauren continued, her smile now tight and performative. "But this seat's taken. You people always try to finesse your way into places you don't belong. Seat 2A, window, Vanessa's seat, paid for, logged, and secured 2 weeks ago. A platinum-level itinerary under her own name. Vanessa Carter, Edward Sullivan, the smug white man in 2B. Didn't bother hiding his glee. "I told you someone like her couldn't afford first class," he said to no one in particular, loud enough for everyone to hear. Then he leaned over and shoved Vanessa's carry-on bag out of the overhead compartment. It thudded hard to the aisle floor. "Go ahead. Take your little bag and find your way back to coach." The cabin crew didn't intervene. They froze, maybe in disbelief, maybe in complicity. Vanessa knelt, picked up her bag with quiet dignity, and placed it upright beside her. Still. She said nothing. She had been here before. Not this plane, not this man, not this flight, but this moment. The moment when silence screamed louder than rage. The moment where power didn't need to shout. It needed to wait. She stood again, straightened her blazer, and calmly looked at Lauren. "I suggest you verify the system," she said. "Before you make a mistake you can't take back." Lauren scoffed. "Oh, I checked. We all did. There's no Vanessa Carter listed in 2A. That pass? Probably forged, or upgraded through some shady back door." That's when Maria Coleman, seated in 3C, leaned forward slightly. She didn't speak, but her tablet glowed open on her tray. Quietly, she began logging the interaction in real time. Maria was Horizon Star's senior ethics officer. Lauren didn't know that. Not yet. Back in row 5A. Nicole Bryant quietly tapped out a message on her device. Override initiated, internal command standing by. Nicole was more than just an assistant. She was the gatekeeper to Vanessa Carter's entire global empire. Vanessa shifted her gaze toward Edward, whose elbow was now spread across the armrest between their seats. He smiled without warmth. "You're holding up the flight. You know how much money every minute costs in business class delays?" Vanessa didn't blink. "You're about to find out." Edward rolled his eyes. "I deal with executives every day. You're not one." Vanessa leaned slightly closer, her voice a whisper meant for him alone. "You're right. I own them." He blinked. Once, and then dropped a crumpled napkin on her bag. She didn't react. She didn't need to. Behind her, Maria's tablet recorded it all. She flagged the napkin under passenger misconduct. She also tagged Lauren's speech under prejudicial denial of access. Nicole's second message came in. Crisis file opened. Board alerted. CEO authorization pending. Then came the paper. Edward reached into his leather portfolio and slid something toward Richard Powell, the cabin manager. A stock certificate? No. A check? No. Too sloppy for a bribe. It was a printed email, folded in half. Maria caught a glimpse of the Horizon Star logo. She marked it immediately. Attempted manipulation of seating via unauthorized staff influence. Lauren stood taller now, the confidence of impunity washing over her face. "If you don't take your seat in economy, I will personally see to it that you're banned from Horizon Star entirely." Vanessa breathed in. Then she said it. "No, Lauren. What you're going to do is step back. Now." Lauren's mouth twisted into a grin. "Oh, and why would I do that?" Maria's voice, calm and clear, rang out from row 3. "Because you're being recorded under board oversight, and you've already violated 3 FAA compliance protocols in less than 5 minutes. Lauren turned slowly. "I don't know who you think you are," she started. Vanessa interrupted for the first time. "I think I'm someone you're going to remember for the rest of your life." And she sat down. Right there in 2A. Edward exploded. "Unbelievable. This is why we need standards. People sneaking in, holding up flights." Vanessa turned her head slightly. "You've said enough." From the front of the cabin, Richard Powell stepped forward, confusion darkening his brow. "Is there an issue here?" Vanessa responded, evenly. "Only if you want there to be." Maria quietly stood and walked up the aisle, tablet still recording. "Mr. Powell," she said, "I need you to log this incident with internal protocol and notify command." "Command?" He frowned. "Why?" "Because," she said, gesturing to Vanessa. "She is command." And that's when the air shifted, just slightly. Enough for Lauren to glance down at the badge clipped to Nicole's blazer. Enough for Edward to realize he'd stepped into something bigger than his entitlement could handle. Enough for the cabin to fall silent again. But this time, for a very different reason. The moment should have calmed down. But Lauren Mitchell wasn't done. In fact, she was just getting started. She stormed toward the front of the cabin, hand brushing her earpiece like a seasoned actor calling for backup. "We have a possible breach," she announced loudly, her voice sharp and trained for drama. "Unauthorized individual in seat 2A, refusing to move. We may need security. Code 417. Several passengers sat upright. One man instinctively clutched his briefcase. A mother with a toddler leaned protectively toward the window. The atmosphere shifted from tense curiosity to quiet panic. Vanessa Carter remained seated. Her back was straight. Her hands rested calmly on her lap. But her eyes, dark and steady, followed every word Lauren said. Maria Coleman, 3 rows back, tapped her tablet 3 times. A silent signal. Nicole Bryant, still seated near the galley, immediately fired off a secure message through Horizon Star's internal alert system. "Flight crew has triggered false alarm. Passenger Vanessa Carter is verified. Security misuse. Recorded and escalated." Lauren returned to the aisle like a soldier sent into enemy territory. Her next move was surgical. She locked Vanessa's tray table shut, snapping the latch with such aggression it echoed. "Tampering with flight equipment," she announced to no one in particular, pretending to log something on her wrist device. "Possible sabotage." Then, leaning close, she hissed under her breath. You can't override everything. You're still just a passenger here. Behind her, Edward Sullivan smirked, whispering just loud enough. You know how they get when they don't get their way. Entitled, loud, always playing victim. That was the moment Vanessa's jaw tightened. Barely. Maria froze. She had heard it too. She spoke, steady and cold. Mr. Sullivan, you've just violated the airline's zero-tolerance policy for racial slurs. Your account and behavior are now under ethics review. Edward turned in his seat. What slur? I didn't say anything racist, I said. You said exactly what you meant. Maria cut in. And I have it logged. Real time. From the cockpit door. Richard Powell stepped back into view, face pale and confused. What the hell is going on here? He muttered. Vanessa met his eyes. You tell me. Richard glanced at Lauren, who avoided his gaze. She said you weren't listed for this seat, he said, his voice low. Said security needed to be alerted. And did you verify that with the manifest? Vanessa asked, voice smooth but firm. He hesitated. No, Maria stepped forward, holding out her tablet. Then let me make it easy. Passenger, Vanessa Carter, Platinum Credential, Flight 332, Seat 2A, Ticket ID verified, paid by Carter Sky Ventures directly from company accounts 2 weeks ago. Lauren's face flickered, but it vanished quickly. She turned her focus to Vanessa's purse, which sat tucked beneath the seat. Mind if I check your bag? She asked sweetly. Protocol. Vanessa blinked once. Touch my bag, she said evenly, and your next protocol will be reading the unemployment manual. Richard sighed, rubbing his temple. Lauren, let's just... But she was already reaching. She snatched the purse, ignoring the gasps, and unzipped it halfway. You're out of line, Maria said, stepping forward. Lauren smiled. I'm protecting the passengers. You can thank me later. Nicole's voice rang out now, calm but precise. Richard, I've just received confirmation from Carter Sky's legal division. Lauren Mitchell has violated 5 clauses of Horizon Star's flight conduct policy. You need to step aside now. Richard looked like he had been slapped. You... What? Nicole stood, walking toward the scene slowly. I am Nicole Bryant, Executive Coordinator for Carter Sky Ventures. Vanessa Carter is our chairman. She owns 100% of Horizon Star Airlines, and you're standing in her cabin. Richard paled. His lips parted, but no words came. Edward scoffed. So what? You're just going to pull the race card and the CEO card at once? Vanessa turned slowly toward him. I haven't played anything, she said. But you've played yourself. That's when the real twist dropped. Lauren, still clutching the purse, took a final step backward and pressed something on the intercom panel near the galley. A mechanical beep sounded. Cabin lights dimmed briefly, and a yellow icon blinked on the screen above. Security hold activated. Code 417. Every eye turned toward it. Some passengers audibly gasped. You triggered the alarm? Richard asked, panic edging into his voice. Lauren shrugged. She's uncooperative. You said to take control. No, I didn't. Richard said. I never said to escalate to 417. Maria stepped forward. That alarm will now be flagged at FAA control. You've just filed a false threat against a verified airline executive. Do you understand the gravity of what you've done? Lauren opened her mouth, closed it, then looked to Richard for backup. But he stepped away. I didn't authorize this, he muttered. Maria turned to Vanessa. Board is online. They're watching now. Vanessa stood. The whole cabin shifted. Her posture was still graceful, but the weight she carried, authority, not fear, sucked the air from the room. Lauren, she said, each syllable landing with measured precision. You have violated my civil rights, my flight access, and Horizon Star protocols. You have accused me of forgery. You have instigated a public disturbance. You have triggered a federal alarm without cause. And you have searched my personal belongings." Lauren took a half step back. Vanessa tilted her head slightly. "Do you know what that means?" Lauren said nothing. Nicole answered for her. "It means you've put your entire career and Horizon Star's reputation on the line." Vanessa turned to Maria. "Alert the board. I am initiating executive override." Maria tapped 3 times on her tablet. The screen above the cabin door flashed again. "Executive override pending. Chairman authorization." Edward let out a derisive laugh. "This is absurd. You people love theatrics." Then he pulled something from his pocket, a folded slip of paper. He leaned toward Richard and whispered, "You know what to do." Maria saw it. She zoomed in her tablet lens and clicked record. Another bribe. But this time, it was clear. Richard looked at the slip of paper, then down the aisle at Vanessa. She didn't look away. Neither did Maria. It was all being logged. Lauren was still frozen by the intercom, and behind her, several passengers, once silent, began murmuring again, not against Vanessa this time, against them. In that moment, something shifted. A power no longer hidden, no longer questioned, began to take form, and every eye in the cabin saw it. She didn't need to. The entire cabin had moved around her, into chaos, into silence, into discomfort, and yet, the humiliation hadn't ended, not even close. Lauren returned with a tray of coffee, too calm, too casual. Her smile now curved with a smug sort of control. She leaned forward, tilting the cup over Vanessa's lap, not by accident, not in turbulence, not with apology. The coffee spilled, slowly, directly onto the soft gray fabric of Vanessa's cashmere pantsuit. The heat wasn't enough to burn, but just enough to sting, and the message was unmistakable. "Oops," Lauren chirped, mock surprised. "You really should be more careful, Ms. Carter, is it?" A gasp rang out from somewhere behind them. But again, no phones were raised. This wasn't a viral moment. It was too quiet, too real. Vanessa stared down at the spreading stain. Steam curled off the fabric. She lifted her eyes to Lauren. No fury, just focus. Maria Coleman stood up so quickly she knocked her tablet to the floor. "That's assault," she snapped. "That is deliberate. And I have this entire sequence documented." Lauren shrugged. "You'll be fine. It's just coffee." Edward Sullivan laughed again, loud and sharp. "You're lucky she didn't throw the whole pot. Honestly, I've seen street vendors with more class than you people." Then he tossed a crumpled linen napkin onto Vanessa's lap. The gesture wasn't kind. It was dismissive, as if offering her something to clean up her own humiliation. Vanessa didn't touch it. Nicole rose from the back of the cabin, slowly, like the tension in her steps matched the charge in the air. Her voice was soft, but clear. "Richard, do something. Now." But Richard Powell, the cabin manager, stood frozen. He looked from Lauren to Edward to Vanessa, then down at the slip of paper still clenched in his hand. He moved. Not toward Lauren, not toward the galley. He stepped toward Vanessa. "I'm sorry," he said, voice hollow. "But I'm going to have to ask you to return to the main cabin." The silence that followed was absolute. Maria's jaw dropped. Nicole blinked once in disbelief. Even the passengers shifted, unsure if they'd just misheard. Vanessa didn't even turn to look at him. She kept her gaze fixed ahead. "You're ejecting the owner of this airline from her own seat?" Nicole asked. Her voice edged with incredulity. Richard didn't meet her eyes. "She's causing a disturbance. We've had complaints. I have discretion." Vanessa finally spoke, her voice calm and low. "From whom?" Richard didn't answer. Maria snapped. "This is a bribe. He's holding a bribe in his hand. Do you not see that?" Nicole raised her phone, not to record, but to live stream directly to Horizon Star's boardroom. "Boardroom's watching," she said quietly. "You want to follow through with this?" Edward grinned like a child who got away with something. "Well, it's about time someone showed her where she really stands." That's when Maria turned to the rest of the passengers. "Ladies and gentlemen, please know you're currently on a grounded Horizon Star flight. With the chairman of the airline being forcibly removed from first class, we are logging this event and will report it publicly. Any witnesses willing to provide statements afterward will be contacted." Still, no one pulled out a phone. But now, people were watching. Closely. Some turned toward Vanessa with a hint of uncertainty, even shame. Others finally understood who she was, and that they had said nothing. Vanessa rose, slowly. Her gray pants were stained, her blouse damp with heat, but her posture was regal. "You've made your choice. Richard," she said. "Let's see what it costs you." "I'm just doing my job," he muttered. "No," Vanessa said. "You're doing his—" Her chin tilted toward Edward. Lauren stood at attention, chin high. "I told you from the start," she said. "You don't belong here." Vanessa turned. "Maria," she said. "Contact the board. Final override. Full activation." Maria tapped into the system. Nicole pressed the link. Above the cabin door, the cabin lights dimmed. The screen, once showing flight status, flickered and changed. Chairman override active. System authority transferred. Lauren's expression finally cracked. "What does that mean?" Nicole looked her dead in the eye. "It means you no longer work here." Edward stood up. "You can't just fire people on the spot," Maria replied. "She can, and she just did." Lauren stepped backward, eyes darting to Richard. "You're going to let this happen?" But Richard's shoulders had already slumped. The slip of paper, the bribe, dropped from his hand like ash. Then, quietly, Vanessa spoke again. "Before you go, Lauren," she said, "I suggest you explain what you meant by people like you." Lauren's lip curled. "I meant scammers, liars, pretenders." "No," Vanessa said. "You meant black. You meant woman. You meant power where you didn't expect it. And you wanted to tear it down." Lauren didn't reply. She turned, slowly, and walked down the aisle toward the galley. The moment her shadow disappeared behind the curtain, the tension began to deflate, just slightly. Maria walked to Vanessa's side and whispered, "The board wants confirmation. Proceed with crew-wide audit?" Vanessa nodded once. "Start with Richard, then pull Lauren's full incident history." Nicole moved to alert ground control. "Landing override sustained. Flight delay now classified under internal misconduct." Then Vanessa turned to Edward. He was still standing. "Mr. Sullivan," she said evenly, "you're no longer welcome on this airline." He opened his mouth. "Say one more word," she added, "and I'll have your firm audited. Horizon Star holds 12% of your portfolio's transportation exposure." He sat down, fast. The entire cabin exhaled, for the first time. A few passengers nodded toward Vanessa. One woman in 1C whispered, "I didn't know. I'm sorry," Vanessa simply said. "It's not about knowing. It's about seeing." Then she sat back down. Same seat, same posture. But everything around her had changed. It should have been over. The override had been activated, the bribe exposed, the words spoken. Lauren was gone, Richard had been disarmed, and Edward was silent, for now. But power, once challenged, never fades quietly. Vanessa Carter had barely settled back into seat 2A when the screens around the cabin flickered again. For a moment. The display showing Chairman Override active blinked erratically, then disappeared. A red banner flashed. Error, system override revoked. Authorization denied. Nicole stood up immediately. That's not possible. Vanessa didn't move. It is, she said flatly. If someone inside operations revoked it manually, Maria's fingers flew across her tablet. The command was reversed through crew interface. Not the boardroom? Nicole's voice sharpened. Who still has access? That's when Dylan Foster appeared. He had been quiet all morning, crouched by the forward galley panel, dressed like just another systems coordinator, clipboard, headset, navy vest, 30 years old, clean cut, blue eyes like polished glass. But now he stepped forward, holding Vanessa's boarding profile in his hand, her digital manifest. I'm afraid her identity couldn't be verified, Dylan said, loud enough for nearby passengers to hear. The system rejected her ID. That's why the override failed. Vanessa turned her head slowly, studying him. Her voice didn't rise. It never needed to. You disabled my access? I ran standard reauthentication, he said calmly. Passenger ID 6743A, flagged for override abuse. Happens sometimes. No, Maria said, stepping between them. You flagged it, and you did it on purpose. Dylan's jaw shifted. I don't know what you're implying. Nicole pulled up the admin log on her device. Her eyes scanned quickly, then stopped. There it is. Access override protocol was tampered with at 9:47 a.m. by user DF Foster 998. She turned the screen toward him. Your badge. Your timestamp. Gasps rippled through the rows. Dylan shrugged, trying to remain calm. I had cause to investigate irregularities. You had no authorization. Maria cut in. You overrode a chairman's credentials. That's fraud. That's federal. He took a step back, hands raised. I was told she wasn't verified, that her seat was disputed. By who? Nicole demanded. He hesitated. Maria stepped forward again. You're done, Mr. Foster. Vanessa didn't move. Her eyes locked on him. You tried to lock me out of my own airline. Dylan said nothing. You could have made a mistake. She continued. You could have followed a false flag, but you didn't. You deliberately injected false data into a live manifest. You erased my seat, and you let the others believe I didn't belong here. Passengers were now leaning forward, watching, listening. The silence was tight. Maria tapped her tablet. Dylan Foster is suspended pending full investigation, effective immediately. Nicole issued a cabin code, System Lockdown Alpha, a rare protocol that froze further edits from crew accounts. But the damage had already been done. Vanessa's override had failed, temporarily, because someone wanted it to, and the passengers had seen it all. That's when Richard Powell, face pale, voice brittle, returned. I didn't know he did that, he said quietly. I thought... You thought what? Vanessa asked. He swallowed. I thought if I kept it quiet, this wouldn't go any higher. It already did, Nicole replied. You just didn't know it yet. Maria walked toward Vanessa and placed a fresh document in her hand, a secondary authorization, printed directly from the boardroom in real time. Vanessa signed it in silence. Then she stood, turned toward the crew, and spoke, formally, clearly. Lauren Mitchell is hereby terminated for gross misconduct, including racial profiling, unauthorized physical contact, and triggering a false federal alarm. The announcement echoed through the cabin. Dylan Foster is hereby suspended for falsifying airline data, tampering with passenger records, and obstructing chain-of-command protocols. Dylan didn't argue. He turned and walked to the rear galley without a word. And Edward Sullivan, she said, facing the man in 2B, is banned from all Horizon Star flights. Effective immediately. Your firm will be contacted regarding internal review. We've traced your role in coordinating staff misconduct, and your behavior has been noted by our general counsel. Edward stood slowly, his smirk wiped clean. You'll hear from my lawyers. Vanessa didn't blink. You'll be lucky to keep your job. He sat down again, and for the first time, the entire cabin broke into soft applause. Not loud, not performative, just a quiet, sustained wave of affirmation that rolled across the rows like a shared exhale. Maria turned to Vanessa. The board wants confirmation to proceed with internal protocol. All logs. Full transparency. Vanessa nodded. Start with the crew manifest. Pull Lauren's last 4 flight histories. I want every complaint, every report, every time someone tried to speak up and was ignored, Nicole added. We should audit the hiring pipeline too. Lauren wasn't just a one-off. No, Vanessa agreed. She was a symptom. She sat again, crossed her legs calmly. The coffee stain on her slacks was still visible. But now, it looked more like a battle scar, a symbol that power didn't mean shouting, that leadership didn't require spectacle. Sometimes, it just meant refusing to leave your seat. Passengers turned to each other, some whispering, some stunned. A few looked ashamed, a few looked inspired, but all of them had seen what began as a delay, a confrontation, a denial, had just become a reckoning, and Vanessa Carter had only just begun. The silence in the first-class cabin had changed. It was no longer the uncomfortable hush of confusion or passive complicity. Now it was something else entirely. Anticipation. Eyes no longer avoided Vanessa Carter. They followed her, tracked her every movement, every breath, every command. She stood calmly, wiping a damp napkin once across the stained fabric of her pantsuit, then dropping it neatly on the edge of the tray. She wasn't angry. She was in command. Nicole leaned close and whispered, The chairman of the board is requesting confirmation of your intent to issue terminations directly. They're watching on internal link. Vanessa nodded once. Proceed. Nicole tapped a code into her tablet. A soft tone pinged from the cabin speaker system, followed by a brief flicker on the overhead screen. Executive action pending. Authority VC-01. Richard Powell stepped forward again. His shirt collar looked tighter than before, his voice thinner. I just want to say, I didn't know Dylan tampered with the override system, and I didn't support Lauren's. Vanessa raised a hand gently. I'm not interested in what you didn't do, she said. I'm interested in what you allowed. Richard looked down. You saw misconduct. She continued. You watched a flight attendant physically assault a seated passenger. You heard slurs. You watched a bribe change hands in your cabin. And instead of acting, you chose silence. You chose comfort. You chose the path of least resistance. Mr. Powell, that makes you unfit to lead any crew. I was under pressure, he said weakly. You're in the wrong industry. Then she turned, fully, to the cabin. Ladies and gentlemen, she said, addressing the passengers directly for the first time. I want to thank you for your patience during this delay. What you've witnessed today wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't a technical error. It wasn't a matter of confusion. It was profiling. It was bigotry. And it was cowardice, disguised as procedure. She let the words breathe. And now that it's over, let me say this. I am not simply Vanessa Carter, passenger in 2A. She turned toward the forward bulkhead, where the Horizon Star logo gleamed faintly in the soft cabin light. I am the majority shareholder, the sole chairman, and 100% owner of Horizon Star Airlines. My name is on every aircraft, every operations license, every quarterly report. This airline is mine, And everything that happened here today happened in my cabin. Gasps rippled through the passengers. One man in 1C leaned forward in disbelief. A woman behind Maria put her hand over her mouth. The businessman in 2D, who had chuckled quietly earlier, now shifted in his seat as if trying to distance himself from his own inaction. Richard's face drained of color. I didn't know," he murmured. "You didn't ask." Vanessa replied. Nicole stepped forward now, raising her voice slightly. "Effective immediately, Lauren Mitchell is terminated. Dylan Foster is suspended pending full investigation. Edward Sullivan is banned from Horizon Star operations, flights, and corporate contracts for life, and Richard Powell." She turned to him directly. "You are relieved of duty, effective now." He opened his mouth, then closed it. No one defended him. "Not this time," Vanessa added. "We will notify all relevant departments and ensure your exit is handled with dignity. But your service here is over." Then she looked back to the other passengers. "You may not know this, but Horizon Star has spent the last 2 years undergoing a quiet transformation. New safety protocols, new aircraft, quietly restructured labor policies, ethics oversight. I didn't launch a media campaign because I wanted change to come from within." She paused. "And today, I saw what still hasn't changed." A long beat passed. "And now," she said, her voice quieter, more measured, "it will—" Maria stepped forward, handing Vanessa a data slate. "We've just received archived crew logs on Lauren. There were 3 prior complaints for racial comments. One internal note flagged her for hostility toward high-value passengers. None of it was acted on." Nicole frowned. "Why wasn't it flagged before?" Vanessa scanned the screen. "Because we didn't build the system to see it. But that changes today." She turned toward the galley, where a new, visibly nervous flight attendant stood silently, unsure whether to move. Vanessa offered a kind nod. "What's your name?" "Daisy," the woman said quietly. "Daisy Nguyen. I'm new. Just finished training last month." "Daisy," Vanessa said gently. "Would you mind helping with a warm towel and a cup of black coffee? No cream?" Daisy nodded, relief all over her face. "Right away, ma'am." "And Daisy?" Vanessa added softly. "Yes?" "You're doing fine." The cabin eased. Tension melted into something else. Respect, perhaps, or realization. Vanessa sat again. Nicole took her seat beside her. Maria remained standing, overseeing the final crew adjustments. Dylan was now seated near the exit row, under quiet watch. Richard had retreated toward the back, waiting for formal removal once the plane reached the gate. But the tone of the flight had changed. Vanessa Carter didn't need cameras. She didn't need hashtags or news headlines. She didn't need an audience. She had power, quiet, strategic, absolute. And she had just used it to dismantle the rot from within. Calmly, seat by seat. She looked ahead, past the curtain that separated first class from the rest of the aircraft, and she smiled. "Now," she said softly, "let's get this flight back on schedule." The crew was changed, the offenders removed, and yet, Vanessa Carter knew the damage went deeper than a stained suit or a revoked seat. Systems don't discriminate by accident. Someone had gone beneath the surface, beyond Lauren's smirk, Richard's cowardice, and Dylan's sabotage. They had gone into the code. Nicole sat beside her now, posture sharp, tablet glowing with fresh alerts. "You need to see this," she said, turning the screen toward Vanessa. "It's worse than we thought." Vanessa scrolled, her brow tightening. An internal command had been executed just 2 minutes after Dylan's override. The same time he was walking away from the manifest system. Command string, Delpax RSV HDR. Run on seat classes. Platinum, Diamond, Legacy. She read it twice, then looked up. He tried to delete the entire premium passenger history? Nicole nodded. All bookings tied to Legacy upgrade accounts. First class, frequent flyers, everyone who doesn't match the profile he flagged. Vanessa exhaled through her nose. It wasn't just about me. He was cleansing the system of anyone who looked like me. Maria stepped forward, having read the alert from her own tablet. I've already escalated the digital breach to our CyberOps division. The deletion was blocked by firewall protocols, but if he'd gotten past the last layer, our full VIP manifest would have been gone, along with every log proving today's misconduct. Vanessa sat back slowly, her fingers laced together in her lap. This was never about a seat. It was about erasure, silence. The flight was still grounded, but the cabin no longer felt like a battlefield. Now, it felt like a boardroom mid-reconstruction, and Vanessa was laying down the new foundation. She tapped a secure code into her tablet and opened a dormant program embedded deep in Horizon Star's operations matrix. Skyguard, she said aloud. Maria blinked. You're activating Skyguard? Vanessa nodded once. Today's the day we stop pretending bias is invisible. Skyguard uses AI to flag discriminatory behavior in real time. Crew patterns, passenger removals, upgrade rejections, seat reallocations. It watches everything. We built it last year, but we never deployed it, Nicole added, because half the board said it was too aggressive, that it would make people paranoid. Vanessa looked up. I don't care about paranoia anymore. I care about protection. Launch it. Nicole tapped the green confirmation. Skyguard initiated. Status. Live on board. Logging active from here on out. Every decision made on Horizon Star flights, every seat change, every override, every complaint and denial would be tracked, recorded, and reviewed. Silently. Precisely. Without bias. Vanessa turned back to Maria. File today's incident under systemic breach. Include Dylan's tampering, Lauren's profiling, Richard's complicity, and Edward's influence. Create a training model based on this flight, and start mandatory anti-bias onboarding for all crew. No exceptions. I want diverse leadership by the end of Q2. Maria nodded. Already drafting the release. Vanessa didn't raise her voice once. She didn't need to. She didn't demand respect. She defined it. From a few rows back. The woman in 3A leaned forward nervously. Ms. Carter, I just wanted to say, I fly Horizon Star often. I've never seen anything like today. I'm sorry it happened. I didn't speak up earlier. And I should have. Vanessa offered a quiet nod. You're speaking now. That matters. Another voice. This time from a young black man in 4C. You just showed us what it means to hold power without raising your voice. That's rare. Vanessa glanced at him, the corners of her mouth softening. Power isn't volume, it's vision and accountability, Nicole whispered. Flight control just cleared us for takeoff. Vanessa glanced at her stained slacks, then back out the window toward the cloudy Chicago skyline. She smiled faintly. Good. Let's move forward. As the aircraft rolled slowly toward the runway, a renewed quiet settled over the cabin. Not the silence of discomfort, but of change. Something had shifted in the air, and everyone aboard felt it. And from this moment on, Horizon Star would no longer be the airline that looked away. It would be the one that watched everything. The aircraft climbed smoothly into the sky. But what had taken flight that morning wasn't just a plane. It was something heavier, something long overdue. Vanessa Carter remained in seat 2A, looking out the window with a quiet stillness that belied the storm she had just weathered. Behind her calm exterior, consequences had already begun unfolding like ripples across a still surface. Lauren Mitchell's dismissal was immediate. Her file, once praised for punctuality and charm, was now locked under ethical violations and flagged for racial profiling and abuse of authority. No cameras captured her exit from the airport. No dramatic scenes played out. Vanessa had insisted on dignity, even in discipline. Humiliation doesn't reform. It only shifts the shame. She'd told Nicole. The lesson had to land deeper than the headlines. Richard Powell resigned before his official termination could be processed. He submitted a single paragraph apologizing for his failure to intervene. Vanessa read it once, said nothing, and marked his file with a quiet note that read, "Deferred responsibility equals accepted injustice." He would never lead a cabin crew again. Dylan Foster's suspension triggered a full internal review. In the server logs, investigators uncovered a chilling pattern. First-class records for passengers of color were being quietly tampered with. Booking numbers were shifted, upgrade histories erased, VIP status removed by invisible hands. Dylan hadn't just tried to delete Vanessa's identity from the manifest. He had attempted to erase an entire pattern of presence. It was systematic, and it was personal. When confronted, he offered no defense. He simply walked out with nothing but his badge in a sealed envelope. But Vanessa wasn't interested in revenge. She wanted reform, and reform meant structure, not noise. She seeded the Rise Together Fund with personal capital. The fund would support passengers facing discrimination, offer legal and emotional aid to victims of corporate profiling, and finance leadership programs for underrepresented talent in aviation and tech. It wasn't about making a statement. It was about making a change that couldn't be undone the next time someone like Lauren climbed the ranks unchecked. The fund's first initiative was a grant to retrain 300 Horizon Star crew members under the guidance of ethics officers like Maria. It also partnered with pilot schools to offer full scholarships for aspiring pilots from communities that had never seen their sons and daughters in a captain's chair. A short promotional clip showed Vanessa walking down a jet bridge. No music, no monologue, just her entering the cabin, pausing at 2A, and sitting down without a word. The screen faded to black with the words, "She didn't raise her voice. She raised the bar." Internally, Horizon Star underwent a transformation. Quarterly bias evaluations were rolled out, not just for crew but for gate agents, customer service, and even scheduling software teams. AI systems like SkyGuard were deployed quietly, monitoring every manifest change, every seat reassignment, and every pattern of complaint. There were no announcements, just a shift in behavior. A new kind of awareness began spreading, not out of fear, but out of purpose. Edward Sullivan's consequences came quietly but swiftly. The investment firm he represented lost all contracts with Horizon Star. Leaked internal emails revealed his history of lobbying against expanded first-class access policies, exposing years of racially coded decisions cloaked in corporate jargon. By the end of the week, his name had disappeared from the company's website. Boardrooms that once welcomed him now turned the page. He had become a cautionary tale, proof that power used to exclude would always meet a ceiling. Back inside the aircraft, passengers had begun to share their experiences. Some posted online about how they had seen something but said nothing, and now regretted it. Others wrote thank you notes to Vanessa. One woman quietly passed her a folded paper before deplaning. A handwritten line reading, "You gave me permission to take up space." Vanessa tucked it into her coat pocket. From that flight forward, Horizon Star crews operated differently. They stood straighter, not in pride, but in accountability. Not everyone had changed, but the system had. That was the beginning. When Vanessa was later invited to speak at a leadership forum, she declined a keynote. She asked instead to be seated among the audience. But when asked to share one thing she learned on Flight 332, she said this: "It's easy to believe we have to shout to be heard, But sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is stay in your seat, not to resist, but to insist on respect, on truth, on change. She didn't smile for applause. She smiled because, finally, she could. And when the next passenger was told they didn't belong, the seat beside them would already carry a legacy they couldn't erase. One made not of noise or outrage, but of resolve. And it started right there, in seat 2A. If this story moved you, don't let it end here. Share it with someone who's ever been told to sit down, step aside, or stay quiet. Subscribe to follow more stories where justice doesn't wait for permission. And if you've ever faced something like this yourself, we're listening. Your story matters too.